$250,000 turned your money into an engine, something that earns while you sleep, something with real weight behind it. But $500,000? $500,000 is where the engine outgrows you, where your investment returns start earning more in a single year than you can save, where $1,000,000 stops being a dream and becomes a timeline you can actually read. Most people never cross this number. The ones who do seem to pull away impossibly fast, and it is not luck, and it is not some complicated secret. Here is exactly what quietly switches on. Here is what you will understand by the end of this video. 6 things unlock at $500,000 that $250,000 only hinted at. The first is the one the whole milestone is built on. The moment your compound returns cross your savings rate, and your money officially out-earns what you add. The second is that $1,000,000 becomes closer than zero, not metaphorically, but by the math of one doubling. The third is full coast mode, not just a funded retirement, but an overfunded one. The fourth is real options, sabbaticals, pivots, part-time work, without blowing up the plan. The fifth is a different set of doors, private markets, real estate with real leverage, deals that do not exist in a public brokerage account. And the sixth is the one nobody talks about in the accumulation phase. Generational wealth goes from something other people have to something you are actively building, whether you are thinking about it or not. These are not things you earn later. At $500,000, they are already yours. Let me show you. There is one concept that explains everything about what makes $500,000 different from $250,000. It is borrowed from physics, and it is called escape velocity. In space, escape velocity is the speed a rocket needs to break free of a planet's gravitational pull. Below that speed, no matter how powerful the engines, gravity wins and the rocket comes back down. Above that speed, the rocket is free. It no longer needs to fight gravity. It keeps moving on its own. In the world of building wealth, there is a version of this moment. It happens at the precise point where your investment returns exceed your savings rate. Below that point, you are the primary engine of your own wealth. Your income, your discipline, your decisions, those are what move the number. The market helps, but you are still doing most of the heavy lifting. Above that point, something changes. The compounding returns are now bigger than the contributions you are adding. You transition from being the engine to being the investor who oversees the engine. The money grows faster on its own than you can grow it by hand. You have reached escape velocity. At $250,000 at a long-run average return of 7%, your money generates roughly $17,500 per year. For someone saving diligently, maybe $25,000 or $30,000 a year, that is still less than what they are adding. The market is a partner, but a junior one. You are still carrying the most weight. At $500,000 at the same 7%, the math flips. The portfolio now earns $35,000 per year. For a disciplined saver putting away $25,000 or $30,000 annually, the engine just crossed the threshold. Your money is now producing more than you are adding. It has outgrown you, in the best possible way. That is the qualitative shift this milestone represents. Not just a bigger number, but a different relationship between you and your own wealth. You spent years feeding the machine. At $500,000, the machine feeds itself. Unlock number 1. Your compound interest crosses your savings rate. This is the one the whole milestone is built on, and I want you to sit with it for a moment because the implications are bigger than the math. Let me make the numbers concrete. Imagine you have been saving $30,000 a year. That is a serious number, the kind that requires real discipline and real income. At $250,000 invested, your portfolio earns about $17,500 per year at 7%. You are still contributing almost twice as much as the market is. You are the primary engine. The market helps, but you are carrying the weight. Now the portfolio reaches $500,000. Same return rate, same 7%. The portfolio now earns $35,000 per year. You are still saving $30,000. The line has crossed. The engine now generates more than you can pour into it. And here is what that actually changes in your daily life. Bad years become far less catastrophic. If you have a year where your savings contribution drops to $15,000 instead of $30,000, a medical expense, a job transition, a tough stretch, the engine does not stop. The $35,000 in annual returns does not care about your circumstances. It keeps earning. You are no longer the only thing keeping the plan moving forward. Job security feels different too. You are not saving because you have to in order to stay on track. You are saving because it accelerates a timeline that is already moving without you. The existential weight behind every paycheck, the quiet anxiety that says, if I stumble, the whole plan falls apart, starts to loosen. The plan no longer depends on you performing perfectly, and the identity shift is real. Up to this point, you thought of yourself as a disciplined saver, the one who says no, the one who protects the gap. At escape velocity, that identity starts to change. You are not the engine anymore. You are the investor who built the engine and now manages it. That is a different role, and it requires a different kind of thinking. You stop asking how you can save more and start asking how you can deploy what is already working. That is the first unlock, and everything that follows is built on it. Unlock number 2, and it is a mind game that most people get completely backwards. $1 million. For most people, that number lived in a distant and abstract future for the entire climb. When you had nothing, $1 million was a fantasy. At 100,000, it was 10 times away. At 250,000, it was 4 times away. But at 500,000, something strange and important happens. The million is not far away. It is one doubling away. And a doubling on a properly invested portfolio is not something you have to engineer. It is something you simply have to wait for. Here is the math. The rule of 72. Divide 72 by your expected annual return, and you get approximately how many years it takes your money to double. At 7%, that is about 10 years. At 8%, 9 years. With zero new contributions, $500,000 becomes $1 million in roughly a decade. Now look back at the journey you just completed. From nothing to 100,000. Grinding, mostly you, almost no help from the math. From 100,000 to 250, hard work, the engine starting to join in. From 250 to 500,000, the compounding starting to matter. All of that, perhaps 10, 15, even 20 years of discipline to reach 500,000. And now, in the same span of time it took to do that last stretch, the balance doubles to $1 million. On its own, without a single new dollar from you. That is not the same game you have been playing. That is a different game entirely. The first 500,000 was earned. The second 500,000, the one that makes you a millionaire, is built. It happens while you work, while you sleep, while you live your life. The math simply does what it was always going to do once you gave it a large enough base to stand on. This is why the people who reach $500,000 so often reach $1 million with what looks like unexpected speed. It is not unexpected. It is the curve finally expressing itself at full power. The whole time you were climbing, you were fighting to get to the steep part. You are there now. Unlock number 3. Full coast mode. Not just probably okay, actually mathematically, verifiably overfunded. At $250,000, you entered coast mode, which meant that even if you stopped contributing entirely, the money you had already saved would likely grow into a livable retirement on its own. That was a real and meaningful milestone. But probably livable and clearly abundant are different things, and the distance between them affects how you feel every single day. At $500,000, let us look at the conservative numbers. $500,000 invested at 7% over 30 years with no new contributions at all grows to just under $3.8 million. At a conservative 5%, it becomes $2.1 million. Even at a pessimistic 4%, it reaches $1.6 million. Whatever projection you choose, the retirement account is not just funded, it is handled. the question mark is gone. What that changes, practically, is the purpose of every dollar you save from this point forward. Your savings are no longer the thing standing between you and a bad retirement. They are no longer survival tools. They are something entirely different now. They are optionality. They are the difference between retiring at 62 and retiring at 58. They are the sabbatical you might take next year. They are the legacy you might choose to build. The savings you make after reaching full coast are strategy, not necessity. And this changes the texture of daily life in a way that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who has not experienced it. Most working people carry a background hum of financial anxiety. Not panic, just a low-level, persistent worry about whether it will all be enough, whether the future version of themselves will be okay. That hum is almost entirely about the retirement number. At $500,000, properly invested, the answer to that question is almost certainly yes. And when you know the answer to that question is yes, the hum quiets. Not overnight, not completely, but it quiets. You start living in the present with a confidence that the future is already handled. That is not a small thing. For a lot of people, that might be the most valuable thing on this list. Unlock number 4, and this one is the one most people secretly want most when they imagine what financial security actually feels like: real options. Not the vague, theoretical option to maybe do something differently someday. Not the abstract sense that you are freer than someone with nothing. Actual, present, mathematically supportable options to redesign how you live and work right now, if you choose to. Here is the structure that makes it work. I call it the barbell life. On one side of the barbell, you leave the $500,000 completely untouched. You do not touch it, you do not redirect it, you do not use it to fund your lifestyle. You let it compound without interruption. On the other side, you redesign how you earn, because you can afford to now. Here is what that opens up in practice. You can take a sabbatical, 6 months or a year, without the retirement math materially changing. The foundation keeps compounding whether you are at your desk or traveling or creating or simply recovering from a decade of grinding. You can pivot to work that pays less but matters more. The teaching career, the nonprofit role, the creative path, the local business, these become viable because the floor is solid. You do not have to make financial decisions based purely on what maximizes income anymore. You can go part-time. You can take the job with the lower base salary and interesting equity because you are not betting everything on that equity paying off. You can move somewhere quieter and cheaper. You can take 6 months to figure out what you actually want to do next, and do it without the desperation that forces people to grab the wrong thing. None of these options require you to spend the $500,000. They simply require that you know it exists. That whatever happens in your career, you are not starting from zero. The known floor is what makes the jump tolerable. Most people who make a great leap in life are not doing it from nothing. They are doing it from a solid backstop. At $500,000, the backstop is solid enough to jump from. Unlock number 5, and this is the one that separates how wealth compounds in the upper echelons from how everyone else builds it. When your portfolio is small, the game you are playing is almost entirely the public market game. Index funds, ETFs, publicly traded stocks. These are excellent tools, liquid, diversified, low-cost, and accessible to anyone with a brokerage account. But they are also the same tools available to everyone. The returns available in public markets are essentially the market return. You get what the market gives, minus fees. There is not much differentiation possible. At $500,000, a second layer starts to become accessible. In the United States, many private investment opportunities, private equity funds, some real estate syndicates, venture capital vehicles, private lending arrangements have minimum thresholds tied to what is called accredited investor status, which requires either $1 million in net worth excluding your primary residence or $200,000 in annual income. At $500,000 in liquid assets, combined with home equity and retirement accounts, many people are approaching or crossing that threshold for the first time. But even before the formal accreditation question, the size of your capital changes what makes sense to access. Real estate investing becomes meaningfully different. $500,000 can fund a substantial down payment on a property worth $2 to $2.5 million. You are now using leverage on a real, income-producing asset, collecting rental income based on the full value of the property while your equity builds based on the full property's appreciation. The amplification is real. Angel investing in early companies, placing $20,000 or $25,000 in a promising startup, becomes viable without it representing a terrifying percentage of your net worth. Private lending, co-investing with people you trust, joining syndicates. These are not universally better than index funds, but they are a different layer of opportunity, and private capital has historically accessed returns that public markets do not consistently offer. The doors that open at this level of capital are not the same doors that were open when you started. The game has quietly changed. Unlock number 6, and it is the one almost nobody is thinking about while they are still in the accumulation phase. At $500,000, generational wealth stops being something other people have and becomes something you are actively building, whether you are thinking about it or not. Let me show you why. $500,000 left completely untouched for 30 years, not added to, not drawn from, not redirected, invested at a long-run average of 7%, becomes approximately $3.8 million. At 6%, it is around $2.9 million. At a conservative 5%, it becomes $2.1 million. These are not optimistic projections. They are what the math does when you give it time and do not interrupt it. Now sit with what it actually means to leave $2 or $3 million to the people you love. The difference between passing on $50,000 and passing on $2 million is not just a bigger number. It is a different category of impact. It is a different kind of inheritance. $50,000 can make a meaningful contribution to a down payment. $2 million can eliminate the financial anxiety that your children would otherwise carry the same way you once carried it. It can fund their children's education without debt. It can give them the same floor that your $500,000 gives you, the backstop that makes their own risks tolerable, that makes their own jumps possible. One generation of building, compounded over 30 years, can break a cycle that held a family back for decades. It can establish a foundation that changes everything downstream. And here is the beautiful part. You do not have to choose between enjoying your own life and building something that lasts for those who come after you. The $500,000 can fund your coast mode, support your retirement, give you real options, and still grow into something transformative to leave. It is not an either-or. The math is generous enough, when given enough time and space, to accomplish all of it at once. That is unlock number 6, and it is the reminder that this is never only about you. So if you are standing at $250,000 or somewhere between there and $500,000, how do you actually cross this line? The good news, and it is genuinely good, the engine that got you here is the same engine that gets you there. You do not need a new strategy. You do not need a different plan. You need to protect the one that is already working and not break it. But there is a trap at this level, and I want to name it clearly because it catches a surprising number of people who have done everything right up to this point. I call it the sophistication trap. As the portfolio grows, a temptation grows alongside it. The number is getting big enough that you start to feel like you should be doing something smarter with it, something that matches the seriousness of the amount. Something cleverer than just sitting in a plain, diversified portfolio the way you have been doing all along. And so people start concentrating bets, chasing alternatives they barely understand, taking on risk they would never have considered when the balance was smaller. Because surely at this level, ordinary investing is beneath the size of the number. It is not. The ordinary process, allowed to run long enough without interruption, produces extraordinary outcomes. That is not a comforting platitude. It is the mechanism. The people who blow up a $250,000 portfolio on something sophisticated almost always look back and wish they had left it in the boring thing and waited. So here are 3 rules to carry from $250,000 to $500,000. Rule 1. Do not let the lifestyle catch up. This is the most dangerous moment for lifestyle inflation in the entire journey. Your income has probably risen significantly by the time you have accumulated this much. The temptation to upgrade everything to match is at its peak. The nicer neighborhood, the newer car, the travel that now feels earned. Every upgrade you skip is fuel directed back into the engine. Every gap you protect widens the gap between where you are and where the math needs you to be. Rule 2. Keep the automation running through every wobble. Between here and 500,000, the market will scare you. It will drop 20% or 30%, and every human instinct will say to pause, reduce, wait for calm. Do not. The automation is the discipline you outsourced to a system that cannot feel fear. It runs correctly precisely in the moments when you cannot trust your own judgment. Let it run. Rule 3. Do not get clever. Stay in the diversified portfolio. Stay in your lane. The extraordinary result, the one where $500,000 becomes $1 million, and the $1 million grows into something that reshapes your family's relationship with money for a generation, comes from letting an ordinary, boring, consistent process run for an extraordinary amount of time. There is no shortcut to the steep part of the curve. You already found it. You just have to stay on it. $500,000 is not built on a brilliant decision. It is built on the absence of a disastrous one. Protect the engine. Let it run. Stay out of its way. $250,000 started the engine. $500,000 is where the engine outgrows you. The compound returns that now outpace what you save, the $1 million that is one doubling away, the retirement that is not just funded but overfunded, the real options to live and work differently, the private markets that start opening, and the generational legacy that is quietly being built, whether you are thinking about it or not. If this gave you a new way to see the number you are working toward, drop a comment with where you are on the journey. We are building this community one honest milestone at a time. And as always, a note worth repeating every time. This channel is for education, not financial advice. I am not your advisor. Learn it, question it, run your own numbers, and make the decisions that are right for your life. I will see you in the next one, where we will talk about the milestone nobody ignores, $1 million, and what it actually means the day you finally reach it.